Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Relegation podcast. I'm your host, Conor O'Neill, joined today by Joe Torres and Gavin Buckland as we look ahead to Everton's huge Premier League clash against Wolverhampton Wanderers at Molyneux on Saturday afternoon. The Blues go in search of all 3 points that could move them one step closer to survival, and who knows, by Monday night the Blues could be safe and could have preserved their Premier League status for next season. Joe, we'll get straight into it because there's no other way than admitting that this game is one of huge importance, both Sean Dyche and Everton.
It absolutely is, isn't it? I think, if you put that to Sean Dyche, you'll say, well, every game's a big game and every game's I want to treat every game with the same importance. But yeah, these ones now are really out at the crunch time, aren't we? This is absolutely crucial. So, it's going to be an interesting Saturday, I think. And obviously, Everton played first, which I think is a good thing. I mean, obviously, you'd want to play last if everybody else, if Leeds and Leicester had lost before you, but if they picked up positive results, I think you'd then be under a lot of pressure. So, Everton, for all it's said and done, I think we're in a situation where Everton's destiny is in its own hands, and that's all that you can ask for. And ultimately, if they go out, it's not quite the same as Crystal Palace a year ago today when we record this, that we know that if Everton get a win on Saturday, that they will be safe on their penultimate game of the season. But things could transpire that way, and they would certainly take. If Everton win this game, then they have got probably 1 foot and 3 toes in the Premier League next season. Weird analogy I just made up, but yeah, it's absolutely huge. There's just no getting away from that, is there? And I think probably most people listening, and probably all 3 of us, just as we say those words ourselves or listen to them, I think the trepidation just increases, doesn't it?
Gav, I got into a debate with a mate the other day in terms of where this game lies in terms of how big it is in Everton's history, because I firmly believe that this game, and maybe Bournemouth next Sunday, 2 of the certainly in recent history and probably modern day history, 2 of the biggest games of football at the club play because of what was on the line.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering where Joe got it without the risk of sounding like Alan Partridge, how he managed to work out with that 1 foot and 3 toes in the Premier League. Mathematical calculation behind that, is it the foot equivalent of an exchange or something? I
have no idea where it came from.
I can't remember your question now, Connor, that long ago. No, seriously, I think, we should mention Crystal Palace last year, didn't we, really? I think in the 21st century, yes, absolutely, definitely. And the only thing, and this is the concern about it, is because we're the first, we don't really know the implications of the results tomorrow, and that sort of adds to the agony to a degree, even if we win. Well, if Leeds win, I know Forest are playing on Saturday night, isn't it? And other teams get good results, then the agony is extended, so you can't, as Joe was saying, we're 2 toes short of being totally in the Premier League, so it's a massive game, and I'm still not convinced. I still don't know whether it's good going first or last, to be honest. But yeah, the one thing I would say is, and I know the Leicester manager was saying that they've had 4 Mondays on the bounce, haven't they?
Yeah,
and they've been a major disadvantage for them going last, and I'd like to go first, but you do wonder whether Dyche is where we are. If we were last, he could alter his team selection depending on the results going forward. That had happened beforehand. Whereas going first, you're sort of you're going out, it's like going on the golf course, isn't it? Being first on the tee. You're in the clubhouse before everybody else has finished the rounds. So from a team selection process for us, I think probably going last would have been a good one. But if we win, the pressure's massive, isn't it? And I say Connor quite rightly, this is a massive, this game and potentially the next game are just totally massive matches, because like last year we beat Palace, we knew we'd stayed up. Win tomorrow, draw tomorrow doesn't guarantee us anything, does it really?
Joe, in terms of what Gav says there, because I thought that was a real interesting point from Dean Smith after the Liverpool game on Monday night, where he basically highlights the fact of, his side have played 4 consecutive Monday nights, so 3 with one to come, and they feel like it's a very unfair advantage. It's putting under more pressure. Obviously, Everton have got the chance tomorrow to essentially ensure everything remains in their own hands and put huge amounts of pressure on Leicester, Leeds, and Forest. But is that almost counterproductive because of the pressure that Everton are building under to do something that they've only managed to do twice this season, and that's going away from home?
I think at this point I think every team's under a huge amount of pressure wherever they go in the order of the fixture list. So I don't think that there's a scenario where Everton would play this weekend and not be under pressure, whether it be on the first or the last. Ultimately, a win keeps it in their own hands, and even if I suppose they played last and everybody else dropped points, then they'd still be in that situation where there'd be a lot of pressure on getting a win to. I mean, it might be to confirm their safety by that point, but yeah, I mean, they're of course they're under pressure. It kind of helps Leicester going 4 Mondays in a row. That's pretty harsh on them, I suspect. But to be honest, again, just like Everton have the potential to keep their own destiny in their own hands. Leicester have been masters of their own downfall as well, haven't they? Because the pressure only increases the closer you get to relegation. Their performances, you think against Everton, that was an up and down game. But against Fulham, I mean, that's where they really let themselves go. But they weren't very good against Liverpool the other night, albeit Liverpool are a very good side. Pressure's a way of increasing itself, or if you're just not very good. So, I don't know. Like, I feel a bit Sean Dyche here and just kind of saying a lot of words without really saying anything. But yeah, they're under a lot of pressure this weekend wherever they go. Is it one of the biggest games? And certainly one of the biggest games this century, isn't it? Certainly probably one of the biggest games of the modern Everton era. Obviously, by virtue of Everton having stayed up last season, a lot of the games around, other than Palace, that were the most important games at the time, are all of a sudden become irrelevant, don't they? I suppose you would look at that Brentford game and you'd look at the Watford game, and at the time they would have been amongst the most important games in Everton's history. But now they're effectively meaningless, aren't they? You'd probably say the Chelsea and the Leicester ones as well as the Palace ones of last season. Just like you could probably say that if Everton stay up, the Brighton one of this year. So it's definitely one of the biggest. It's definitely one of the biggest. They can't. I think they will beat Bournemouth under whatever circumstances, but I don't think anybody nobody wants to, and I really don't think anybody. Everton should do everything they can to be going into that last game not in the bottom 3 already. That would be a nightmare, I think.
Gav, obviously, Joe touched on it there, but do you have more confidence in Everton going and getting all 3 points tomorrow after the fact that they went to Brighton and won so effectively at the start of this month, that they've shown that they can win on the road, that they found a formula? Because obviously, we spoke at length on the podcast about this season, the troubles on the road, the seemingly kinds of head blocks of not being able to find a win. Now they have found a way to win. Are you more confident that they can, go tomorrow and come over all 3 points?
Yeah, absolutely. But not just Brighton. Leicester was a good performance, wasn't it? And I think the way form, though we've not won under Dyche, obviously as often as what we want, the way form has been good. To 1 defeat and 6, is it? And that was it. Man United's on the road.
Yeah, and that was Arsenal, I think it was, which was only the defeat.
Yeah, we've had a couple of. We've scored quite a few goals as well. So yeah, definitely. Under Dyche, we've changed enough, given his own away records not being brilliant. We've been probably far more attractive away from home in terms of goal scoring than what we have been, and I've been more fluid than what we've been at Goodison. So yeah, absolutely. And I think your message will be to Brighton. Wolves are like different team, aren't they? Pretty different team to Brighton in some respects. So we may have to switch it up a little bit to Brighton. But yeah, absolutely. I'd say, I don't know what the odds are for tomorrow, but I think, you'd say that we're probably, a bit, I wouldn't say favourites, but we probably get, low odds on us winning, because I think comfortable. Classic cliche, Wolves got nothing to play for, and I'm confident. Without giving too much away about my score prediction at this stage, but now, answer your question, Connie, yeah, absolutely. Far more confidence, just on the way form of the dice over the last 6 weeks or so.
Sean Dyche held his pre-match press conference on Thursday afternoon. You're obviously there for the Echo. Some significant injury team news, I think, in terms of, Vitaly Mechanical not looking like he's going to make this one. Dominic Calvert-Lewin seemingly being a positive update. We will come on to Mechanical and the left-back conundrum shortly, but in terms of Calvert-Lewin, was you encouraged by what Sean Dyche said? Was you concerned? Because he didn't rule him out. We didn't rule him in. He kind of didn't really say very much, but I think a lot of fans are optimistic that he will be in the squad tomorrow, possibly going to start. What was your good feeling when you heard Sean Dyche's update?
I don't know, to be honest.
After a long game, the long game has said it all.
I've given up trying to interpret Sean Dyche. I mean, for 10 weeks there was a Willie won't he play or be fit with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. In fairness to Everton and the player, and it's probably a good thing, really. They've been very good at kind of stopping leaks about where he is at and getting out this season. Sean Dyche was far more chirpy than he is most of the time yesterday when I was at Finch Farm with him. He was in a better mood than he normally is. He was quite jovial. He wasn't as sometimes he can be a little bit awkward, and he wasn't awkward at all yesterday. So I think that he's in a good mood, and that must be because Dominic Calvert-Lewin is one of the players that's going to have back at his disposal. He gave him a couple of down days, so I think I've seen the club release a few sets of training photos from this week, and in those I couldn't see any. They might have done since or after we've recorded this. They might release some with Dominic Calvert-Lewin training with the group. I hadn't seen any from earlier on this week from training with the group, only training separately. Sorry, not training separately, just not with the group. I wouldn't worry too much about that, because Sean Dyche, one of the things that he's been saying is saying that Dominic Calvert had a few basically quieter days on the training front, just as I say, just as a precaution over the groin issue that they weren't sure was going to be serious or not halfway through the Man City game. So I think he probably is going to be fit and available. Obviously he's huge for Everton, isn't he? It's crucial that he's there for the next 2 days, for the next 2 games. It'd be interesting to know. I'd be interested to know what Dyche would do if there was a risk to playing him, if they were concerned enough to go, do we rest him for Bournemouth, or do we go all out for Wolves and maybe risk him not being fit for Bournemouth? That would be an interesting conundrum to have, bearing in mind his importance to this Everton side. But I don't have any insider knowledge, but I think ultimately I'd take a positive view of Dyche's comments and his approach yesterday. I think Calvert-Lewin will be there and involved, I think, at Wolves.
Gav, what Joe mentions there leads us on nicely, because Matt Jones of this parish, and of course regular contributor to the Rugby podcast, asked a question on Twitter, I think it was last night, where he basically said, if it comes to Calvert-Lewin, if there's a chance he potentially aggravates his injury by playing on Saturday against Wolves and then misses Bournemouth, what do you do? Do you play him tomorrow, or do you rest him ahead of Bournemouth? My opinion is that you've got to play him tomorrow, because the biggest game is the one that you play next. And the majority, was 84 to 16% was, and you've got to play him tomorrow. Are you of that opinion? Do you think it's got to be a case of you've got to put him in tomorrow because tomorrow's the biggest game? You can't worry about next week because you don't know what could happen next. Could be next week.
Yeah, could be too late. Yeah, I'm 9 toes out of 10 that he should be playing tomorrow. Again, this is the thing. What I was saying about team selection being determined by where the position we were playing in comparison with the other teams. If we were the last team, say we were playing Monday and all the 3 teams had got beat or had got a draw and we were still out of the relegation zone, you're thinking, well, maybe not be worth risking Calvert-Lewin for this, and because I know that we can win against Bournemouth. But because we're at the start and we sort of got to win, I suppose, then that forces us down that eventuality. Yeah, that you got to play him. As I say, if you're playing after the other team's played, it may be not as obvious choice. But yeah, I've got to play him. If he said he was training with the squad for a couple of days, I thought, as Joe said, you don't know. I mean, he'd have played every answer about Lampard and Dice about Calvert-Lewin's fitness over the last, say, 2 years or 18 months. And so what would you get? There's a degree in body language and, the social studies there, isn't it, really? Communication. You don't know. I've heard it. I don't know if it's good or bad, but he's got to play. If he can get on the pitch, he's got to play on Saturday and just get tomorrow over it and worry about Bournemouth. Because obviously the eventual one thing you don't want to do is have a damaging defeat where he could have made a difference. Other teams win, you go to Bournemouth and it's too late then. If other teams get a result, so he's got to play tomorrow.
Joe, we've seen, Sean Dyche carefully manage Calvert-Lewin's return, and I think he's been very much mindful of rushing Calvert-Lewin and putting him straight back in. There was rumours, ahead of after the Fulham game that Calvert-Lewin wants to be involved, but Sean Dyche held him back and stuff like that. Is tomorrow the case where Sean Dyche's almost got to go against what he's been like so far with Calvert-Lewin and just gamble on him, like Gaz says, just put him on the pitch because the difference he makes and the impact he has on this team, it is clear for all to see. Everton is the best team and lead the line than without him.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with what Gaz says. If there's any, if there's any chance, if he's fit enough to get on the pitch, he's got to go there. Like, he's got to play. The reality is that if results go against Everton this weekend, it could be well and truly out of their hands come next weekend. And then, what's the good of having? You might be able to play them, but you could score an hat-trick and it could be too late. So if there's any chance of getting him on the pitch tomorrow, he's just got to be there. It's a shame that Everton are in a situation where they have more depth in that position, and unfortunately they are so reliant on one person. It's not fair on him. It's not really fair on Sean Dyche, but obviously it's a situation that he's inherited. But unfortunately that's where we are. We can't do anything about it. But if Calvert-Lewin's available, he's got to be involved.
Gav, in terms of Calvert-Lewin, touch wood, we hope that he does make it. If he doesn't, what would you do if you were Sean Dyche? Would you go with Neil Maupay, bring Damari Gray in, roll Dice Morel Sims? Because although they're not great options, he does have options.
It does. I mean, I'm just trying to think here. Some of this is tied into Mikalenko, isn't it? But we'll talk about the left back situation. Obviously, what the solution is for resolving if Mikalenko doesn't play. What the solution is for that may determine who you play up top. I think to be fair, and for all things being equal, you've got to play Gray, haven't you? Really, we spoke about that on length on Monday. He's done assuming we play 4-5-1, which we may not do. You've got to play Gray in that role. The only thing I'd say about that is I'm just wondering whether he brought Maupay on at half time last week for a reason. That he brought Calvert-Lewin's up. Thinking he may not be available next week. I'll give Maupay 45 minutes because he's going to be my first choice at Wolves. Perhaps that was, you could read something into that. But personally, you got to play Gray. He's done a reasonably good job while he's been up top, and they can be got at, can't be the Wolves' central defence, I think, a little bit. And I'd definitely be playing Gray there.
Joe, for a man who doesn't give much away in Sean Dyche, I thought he was incredibly honest on Thursday when he was asked about the left back and Mikalenko and injuries and stuff, and he said that they will consider changing formation. It was under consideration to change formation. That's obviously a little bit more insight than what we've been used to with Sean Dyche. So since he arrived at the club, in terms of that, then are we almost now expecting a change of formation? Do you think maybe it might be 3 at the back, but wing backs, and Everton will shuffle a pack completely from what we've become accustomed to?
Well, I mean, it's the second time he's mentioned changing shape, because after City, he was saying that that's something that they were considering looking at the changing shape. That after Mikalenko got injured, they just didn't have time to go through it. So I think it shows an awareness that the loss of Mikalenko, bearing in mind the Godfrey and Coleman are also, and the knock-on effect that has on the other positions. I think it shows an awareness that it might not be the best way to go forward with four at the back and Holgate at left back again. The problem is, we use a very Sean Dyche phrase here, and risk and reward. If you change the formation, if you go to wing backs, well, they haven't played that way under Dyche so far. So that's a bit of a gamble in itself. If they play wing backs, it's surely Dwight McNeil ends up a left wing back. Or before we're talking about the importance of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Dwight McNeil's been Everton's best attacking player for quite for the past 6 weeks or so. So if you're in a situation there where you're nullifying the potential threat that he can cause by having him go further back, then it really isn't ideal at all. So I honestly don't know, because there isn't a reassuring solution to Mikalenko's absence, I don't think. I think, to be honest, I'd almost be more inclined to stick to what he knows and go 4-5-1, change as little as possible, and just hope that Holgate can do a job at left back in the way that he's struggled to do so recently. But if you start changing things around now, then one of the things that Sean Dyche is clearly very big on is consistency of approach, consistency of tactics, consistency of partnerships, and change of formation now would potentially knock things out of sync a little bit. And I'm not sure that the benefits would outweigh the negatives really of sticking to what albeit with Holgate at left back. Obviously, if they go to 5 at the back, they go to 3 centre backs. Connor Cody's not available because he's ineligible with Wolves being his parent club. So you probably you either got Holgate coming in or Keane coming. Holgate coming in with McNeil as left wing back, or Holgate coming in at centre back, or Keane coming in at centre back. I mean, the options just aren't really ideal in any stretch. I think go around the bushes over here, but I think that it probably depends on what he wants from the game. If he's going in there and he wants a win, then I think he probably has to go 4-5-1 and keep McNeil up in a more advanced position. If he's going in there and he thinks that the draw might be suitable, I don't think if it's a draw tomorrow, it'll be a nervy weekend. But I think a draw ultimately will probably be a good result. I think once everything, I'm not saying we want to run that risk, but I think if he wants to play it safe, or safe from a defensive perspective, he'd probably play 5 at the back. But I don't know. I think 4-5-1, and same as Gavin. If Calvert-Lewin's out, it has to be Gray up top. I've got no idea what the Mopé second half against Man City was last weekend. When Calvert-Lewin was out, Gray was the last player, the last option up top by himself that Dyche came to. He tried Sims and Mopé first. Gray was the only effective solution. Particularly when he had Decore around him, which he would have tomorrow. So it's got to be Decore. It's got to be Gray over anyone else if Calvert-Lewin can't start.
Is consistency the key for you, Gav? You although he's struggled in recent weeks at full back at the left and on the right, is Mason Holgate a safer choice than kind of ripper what we've seen and going with Breed the back and made the Batson at right wing back and Dominic Calvert-Lewin at left wing back?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about that at lunchtime. I'm come to the conclusion that Holgate would still be the best option for us, and just go with that because it's the least destructive solution. But go back to Mikalenko. I thought I played his answer to the question about 3 or 4 times because Joe, you were saying about sometimes he gets into double speak. He started off, wasn't he? He got asked about it and then he said, "Oh no, we haven't saved." But it's a possibility for next week. Then he talked about changing shape, and he said Mikalenko's close. It's just like, hang on a minute. He just said like 30 seconds ago he's not playing and he's possible for next week. You don't say he's close to selection. I mean, so on that basis, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised whether it's not necessarily a done deal that Holgate plays or we have another left back. I wouldn't be surprised if he, based on Dyche's answer, whether Mikalenko's there tomorrow. But yeah, you got to go with that. The reason why I said Mopay is if you went 3 at the back, you could get a system where you could get, say, 3-4-3, and have Mopay playing a system you had at Brighton as a central striker. But that is a huge risk at this stage of the season. But I just thought his answer about Mykolenko was fascinating, really, and totally in tune with what Joe was saying about Sean can say a lot without saying anything, or on occasion slightly giving 2 different answers to the same question. But yeah, Holgate left back, Gray up top if Calvert-Lewin's not fit, but I still think we'll see Calvert-Lewin based on what Dice was saying.
I mean, would either of you be surprised, given what we've seen and given this is Everton, if Mykolenko starts and Calvert-Lewin's on the squad tomorrow?
I think I've stopped being surprised. Well, but I was very surprised at Brighton when they produced that performance out of nowhere. Probably not, to be honest. If Dyche keeps Everton up and then is there next season, which he probably would be if that was the case, he could do us all out of a job, because it could get to a point where there's no point speculating, because it's just such a thankless task that there's just no point.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be even more surprised if Mykolenko played up front as Calvert-Lewin's replacement. Yeah, I mean, we're having a laugh about Dyson and bit of double speak and stuff like that. He's not the only, every manager does that to a degree, don't they? It's not the fair. I mean, I'm a big student, obviously, the 60s and 70s when Harry Katic was the manager, and God bless Harry. Harry was the master of it. Harry would name his team in alphabetical order. Just to flummox people at a time when everybody played the same formation every week. That did nothing. So he's certainly not the first ever manager. And I know Moyes could be a little bit accused on occasion. So at this stage of the season, I'm not blaming him for keeping his cards close to his chest, to be honest with you. And it makes for entertaining discussion, doesn't it, around psychology and all that. I thought the Mykolenko answer was a classic. You should love it, yeah.
Obviously, Jensen teams of Everton this weekend will focus on Molyneux. But obviously, we will all have eyes elsewhere. The City Ground Saturday night, the London Stadium on Sunday afternoon, and of course St James's Park on Monday night. One big result, I think, not involving Everton, but involving a former Everton manager, and that was David Moyes. So West Ham booked their place in the Europa Conference League final. Some interesting celebrations post-match in the West Ham dressing room. I think it's safe to say a few crates of Heineken made their way in. Although reportedly David Moyes did turn down the request from the West Ham players to have a night out last night to celebrate, which is very nice done. But from an Everton perspective, good, bad? Are we concerned? Or are you looking at that and thinking, well, Everton's going to think that they'll have their own business and not rely on anyone else?
Well, Everton have to look after their own business and not rely on anyone else. I mean, that is the fundamental, point. But yeah, whilst I was pleased for Moyes, I was pleased for West Ham as well to a certain extent. That wasn't an ideal situation last night. Even the fact that those reports are true, the players were after a night out probably suggests that their mindset isn't firmly focused on the league activities at the weekend. And given that they play West Ham, I mean given that they play Leeds, that's not good. And I just it worries me, if I'm honest. It does worry me. We saw all the changes that West Ham made at the weekend going into this game, rested the vast majority of their first team and just, accepted a meek defeat away at Brentford. Now, obviously, there's a couple of weeks until their final, but this is one of the biggest games in Moyes and a lot of those players' careers, isn't it? And, they're coming up against a Leeds side on, West Ham are staying up. I know they could end up finishing. They're still not 100% safe, but it would take a remarkable run of results and goal difference swings and things like that for them to go down. I just think that Leeds game, if you're a player or manager that's looking to preserve yourself for one of the biggest games in your career in a couple of weeks' time. That Leeds game's probably about as low down the pecking order in what you'd want as possible. You have a Leeds side under Big Sam, scrapping for everything, desperate, fighting for their own survival, and they're not the best side on the disciplinary chart this season, Leeds either. Am I really putting Declan Rice in front of Weston McKennie? Am I really lining someone like Jared Bowen up against Junior Firpo? These players, I'm not saying they're bad players, and they're obviously not malicious players, but they've got a lot of bookings this season. They've got a lot to fight for at the moment. So, I'd be, even if Moyes, his sympathy will probably still lie with Everton. I'm sure he'd love to help Everton out if he can, but I'm not sure he would at the expense of potentially losing someone like a Declan Rice or a Lucas Paqueta or a Mikel Antonio or a Jared Bowen to and having them absent for the biggest game that most of them, obviously Declan Rice has played in huge games for England, but the others it'll be amongst the biggest games they've played, right? So I'm nervous about that. My nerves will be somewhat allayed if Everton just go and win at Molineux, which obviously the pressure will still be on them then going into the final game of the season if Leeds also won. But I feel like Everton will beat Bournemouth if they need to beat Bournemouth. They've just got to make sure that they're not in the relegation zone after this weekend. Bearing in mind everything that Leeds have got to play for, and bearing in mind the context in which West Ham are operating, the safest way to do that is just to go to Molineux and win. And it's not easy, of course. It's not easy. We know it's not easy, particularly for this Everton side. But if ever there was a time to kind of raise their game, then Saturday is it. So hopefully they will soon.
Gav, you a little bit nervous by events what could transpire at the stadium?
Yeah, I said that I think on Monday that perfect week with above Moyes, so Moyes winning, Everton winning. I mean, the counter to say is, if West Ham had got beat last night, don't you remember this, Connor, when we got, this is just a random sample of one game, when we got knocked out at Fiorentina, I remember in 2008 we played, we'd had to be probably the strongest I think we've been as a team since we won titles in the mid-80s between October 2007 and February 2008. I think we won 15 out of 17 games, something like that. We got knocked out of Fiorentina under Moyes, obviously, and we went to Fulham. And we produced absolutely shabolically bad performance and got beat 1-0 just because it was just it was just on the bounce of a bad European defeat. And there's that aspect to it as well, isn't it? Even if West Ham had got beat, they're not in the best frame of mind playing Leeds. So whichever way you look at it, either way, it's not ideal to blame West Ham. I mean, it's funny, isn't it, how a month ago, and it's weird for us to think of it, a month ago we thought Wolves was going to be a bit of a relegation scrap, didn't we?
Yeah.
And now that isn't. And a month ago you thought, looking at Leeds' last two fixtures, I'll tell you what, West Ham away, that'll be tough, and Spurs at home, that'll be tough. And now they look far easier fixtures than what they did 4 or 5 weeks ago. And that's a concern, isn't it? Shows how it changes. But you can take the West Ham either way for me. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that they won, because if they got beat, might get a similar reaction. So yeah, as Joe said, spot on, isn't it? We went on Saturday, then all bets are off, aren't we? Aren't they really? And remember Forest is still in it. Forest only 2 points out of us, aren't they? They've got a tough game, and then they go to Palace, I think, at last game. I just started thinking last night, like if any Everton fan was on Mastermind in the future, your special subject will be Premier League fixtures April and May 2023. The fixture list off by heart, weeks in advance. Yeah. And if Forest is still in, I think he can write Leicester off. And West Ham goes to Leicester last game, so that'll be a bit of a fallback if things go a bit early for him. I think it's you've got to include Forest in this. They've got a tricky game, obviously, on Saturday tea time. So it's not just going to be us, I think, us and Leeds. So yeah, West Ham either way. I'm just glad Moyes got 3 made up for him.
I think as well, the big thing with Leicester now is I think also St James's Park on Monday night. With Newcastle, after they win, they secure Champions League football for next season, and well, we know better place for them to do that with either than a home ones. They float right to St James's Park and kind of go into party mode and party celebration. But Joe, away from the football, there's also been some big Everton takeover claims this week. For a long time, it appeared that MSP sports capital, I think it is, where they're seen as the company would have come in and take a minority stake in a football club. Whether a report from the Mail earlier this week claimed that 7 partners were in talks over taking over Farhad Moshiri's full stake in the club and taking over the club essentially. I think Paul Joyce reported last night that there was a bid made, or there was certainly a financial offer made from 7-7 to Moshiri on Wednesday. Obviously, it's a bit of a side off from the football while concentrations are on, but all the same, some pretty big developments in terms of off the pitch investment.
Yeah, in theory, obviously, we know these talks and negotiations and things like that have been going on for quite some time. Farhad Moshiri's been relatively open since last summer that he's been seeking investment, mainly in relation to the stadium. And the reality is, when him and his representatives are going out there into the big wide world having these conversations over looking for financing for Bramley Moore, there will be people that will probably, once the doors open, start to kind of poke around a bit and see if there's a willingness to sell. Precisely where he's at, I'm not entirely sure. He's insisted for a long time that he only wants a minority, just to sell a minority stake. So, but obviously situations change, and let's be honest. I think for him and for the current board at Everton, it's not, the current predicament is far from ideal. So you'd think that. Well, you think at any time that if the right deal came along, people would be willing to listen to him, perhaps more so now. I think obviously big claims around 777, but the Mail report was interesting, but it was also heavily caveated, and I think it's just worth bearing that in mind when you read these things. Look for the kind of look for almost the get outs, and I think that the idea that a deal could be done. They were looking to do a deal next week, but they also want Premier League guarantee before they conclude a deal. Well, all right, there is a scenario where that could be the case next week, but there's probably going to be some degree of jeopardy going into the final day of the season. So, I don't anticipate anything really happening until after the season's over, because the survival or relegation just changes the value and everything around the deal so dramatically that although there'll be a plan A and a plan B, and people say there might be two prices or two versions of the deal on the table, I think it'll still require a lot of talking around for anything to be done after the season, particularly if Everton were to go down. So I think it's going to be a busy summer. I think it's going to be a bit of a summer of uncertainty. I think there's going to be a degree to which 777, probably MSP, are going to be jockeying for favour. Obviously, both deals contrast quite significantly, and I think the important thing is I think there's two important things for Everton. One, ideally, they almost contradict each other to some degree. On the one hand, you want things to be done quickly so that Everton can start planning for next season, whatever league they're in. This is a club that hasn't used its summers particularly wisely, and if Everton were to go down, then we talk about biggest this, biggest that. If Everton were to go down, it's their biggest summer in decades and decades, because really, when a club, especially a club the size of Everton, go down, you have a very small window whereby your chances of coming straight back up are more favourable. The longer you spend down there, the harder it becomes to get out of it. So Everton's decision making needs to be absolutely spot on in the summer if they were to go down. Even if they were to stay up, I think, the reality is that Everton had a lot. They had a big warning shot. The alarm bell should have been sounded at the end of last season, and everything that they've done since then has led to exactly the same scenario unfolding this season. So again, clearly there needs to be a bit of a strategic rethink and a proper plan for how Everton are going to approach next season if they stay in the Premier League, and that has to be ready to go from the minute they should already be ready to go. So on that hand, any uncertainty around the future of the club could do with being dealt with quickly. But probably even more important than that is, I think that I think Everton fans should be cautious. I think there are a lot of interesting actors around football clubs, not just in England but around the world, and we understand that it's quite clear that there's a degree of dissatisfaction from some elements of the fan base with the current regime, but it can't be change at any cost. And I think that due diligence and scrutiny will need to be applied to anybody that's coming in. Obviously, there's only really so much that fans can do. We've seen that time and time again. Ultimately, if Bayern Munich decides he wants to sell, then there's a very kind of obviously that you have things like the Premier League, writing proper owners tests and things like that. But the thresholds for for coming in is pretty low, and the ability for people that aren't the footballing governing bodies to do anything about any prospective owners is there isn't that many options. But I think the club needs to focus at the moment on Premier League survival. Just as a reporter looking ahead to from this week to next week, it's like it's already stressful enough thinking that if Everton have got anything on the line going into that final day of the season, I think next week's going to be very difficult for all of us. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be nervous. It's going to be tense. We're all going to be full of anxiety. I'll have to probably be in that situation where I'll have to do 2 or 3 versions of every single story that I potentially do. One based on survival, one based on relegation, which is a tedious and terrifying kind of prospect as well. But that's got to be the focus then. And then once we know where Everton's fate is, I don't think Everton has been such a tumultuous club for so long. I don't think this summer's going to be any different. How things are going to emerge once we've had the shake-up, who's going to be in control, who's going to be making the decision makers, I don't know. There are still different interests, different parties that want different things, and Moshiru's current intentions aren't particularly clear. So where we end up, I'm not entirely sure, but just expect another summer of Everton being in the headlines, I think.
Gavin will brace for another summer of upheaval, Everton in the headlines, and possibly some change.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, the other known is the Premier League sanctions, of course.
Of course, yeah, good point.
What happens if the Premier League says we've got 2-year transfer ban? That affects the value of the club, doesn't it? Really, and that may not play out for a while. So, yeah, I think either way, on and off the pitch, it's going to keep us busy. I think podcasting, which is whether that's good or bad for you guys. To be honest with you, you decide. But yeah, regarding, I get where people become sceptical. Where there's, we've heard figures of 600 million quid, which I presume is the stadium paying off the debt, the value of the club. But where do people get 600 million quid from? And I get that, and that you can see why, as much as, and I fully get this, understand why people want change at the top. As Joe said quite rightly, it can't be, just do it for the sake of it. We just want somebody different. There has to be checks and balances around that. And that's why I want as well. It's not the first person just turns up on your doorstep flashing a load of cash. And so there's that aspect to it. And then we've got obviously on the playing side, even if you stay in the Premier League, there's going to be a lot of work involved, isn't it? Around restructuring the club and the playing staff. And it's going to be Dyce's first field transfer window as well. So yeah, it's going to be at a more tumultuous days, I think.
I think whoever said that sports journalists often have a quiet summer, I've never heard of a football club. I think it's
well, you know what? I was doing some stuff before. I mean, years ago, certainly before the internet. If you had a newspaper out in the summer, it was like football wasn't even in it.
No.
From sort of the middle of May to probably, you could only start getting back into the back pages once like the pre-season friendlies happened, and even you could in the Echo. I mean, when I've done research on football in the Echo's archives, I don't bother looking at June and July years ago. Nothing in there, and now it is for lots of reasons. 24/7, whether it's January, February, or June and July, isn't it? Really.
Gents, I think we will finish up by sticking with tradition and making our predictions for tomorrow's big game. Joe, I'll come to you first. You'll be at Molyneux alongside Chris Beasley. What are you backing the Blues to do tomorrow?
I'm going to go for one each. I am. I think it'll be a draw. I don't think that won't definitely be a bad thing. But obviously it'll lead to a nervy weekend at least. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for a draw.
Gav?
I'm going to go for the win. I just think, I think it's sitting in the stars tomorrow.
Yeah.
I just think that win at Brighton. I just think that win at Brighton has given us a little bit of impetus. We're talking about our away form. That points to Leicester as well. And I'm going to go for a comfortable 2-0 win.
Nice that.
I don't know why. Absolutely never got a clue. Because we've got it all to play for tomorrow. And also, Bosa's home form has been good, but their away form hasn't been good. And that strikes me as a team that be a little bit flaky, if character-wise. And I think because we've got nothing to play for now, I'm going to go for a 2-0 win for the Mighty Blues.
I'm going to vote for a 1-0 win, but I think it'll be far from comfortable, and I think it'll be reminiscent of the Leicester season when it was edge of the seat, arse in mouth, last 5 minutes behind the couch. that type of game, I think, for the Blues tomorrow, I think it'll be far from comfortable, but I think they'll just go over the line. And we can only hope, I think, then that come Monday evening, we'll possibly not celebrate as much, but 16-year reliever on our team will be back playing in the Premier League next season. But of course, we will be back on Monday to look back on the weekend's action, all the goings on in the relegation battle, and of course, taking an in-depth look at what happens at Malmo Saturday afternoon. But for today, thank you very much for listening to the Road Podcast.